Okay, so I've got my model there, of course, set up with the outside shell of the building, the walls and the windows. Really important that we've got the windows because I want the light to come through those. And then by setting up for the site analysis plan that we looked at last week, I'll just go to that drawing. Sorry, not that one. The which one? Sorry, work out which one. Locality plan. Is that what I called it? No, there was one that had the drawing, and I forgot what I called it. One of these. Where you can see the sun path, and I've forgotten what I called it. That's totally mad of me. Let's just go through and see. Well, anyhow, there it is. Sorry, this one. I just haven't zoomed out. So, okay, so you can see there I've got the sun path showing the relationship of the solar orientation to the building. And that's really important. You need to have that sun direction set up by setting true north. Now I'm just going to close a lot of these views so that we can just have some tabs open and you can also tell which ones I'm using. Okay, so because the first thing I'm going to do before I even start doing too much modelling is make sure I've got the sunlight working for rendering. And so you're lucky if you've modelled the building this way with the entry on the north side. It'll work even if you don't set the solar orientation correctly because that's almost the right direction as it is if north was this way. But if you've remembered that thing we looked at last week, setting true north, using that rotate true north, then the sun direction shows up in these true north views, but it also applies to every other view in Revit. Okay, so even this view that isn't oriented to true north, because we've set true north, Revit knows which way the sun should be, and it's coming from this way, that's north, and then it rises in the east, so it starts over here, and then in the afternoon comes around to the west. So before I go and put in some new layout elements, I'm just going to go to the level 1 floor plan and remind you how to make a camera view. Well, actually, have I shown you camera views so far? No? A little bit? Yeah. Okay, so if you haven't seen this before, it's on the quick access toolbar. You've got that down arrow next to the house, and you can choose camera from there. And I'll just press escape and show you the other way. On the view tab, you've got basically a bigger version of that same button when you click under 3D views, and you can go to camera there as well. So if you're not sure, camera means perspective. The two words mean the same thing. And so to make a perspective view, of course, we can use camera. And so here, choosing camera, I'll pick a point to place my camera. And then the only tip I'm going to give you when you're choosing the next point, don't put it too close to your camera. So I'm choosing the next point to set the direction of my camera, but if I make it too close to the camera, it's going to crop the view and I won't see the things that are off in the distance. So I'm going to take it out a reasonable distance from my camera. Again, it's mostly the angle of the view I'm trying to set there, and I'm going to then click to place my second point, and because I took it away far enough from my camera, I can see the back wall there. I'll just show you quickly if I didn't do that. And you'll see this, everyone makes this mistake. When I go and place a camera, and I'll do it off in the same spot and just bring that point a bit too close to the camera. And notice I can't see anything, not because it's not there, but because when we look at that camera you can see it's cropping it here. Now you can adjust it just by dragging that point out, but if you remember to place your target point further away, you don't have to do that. So I'm going to show you one other little thing. If you want to see that camera in a plan view and it hasn't come up automatically, you can always find the view name, and camera views always start off with the view name 3D view and then the number. You can see there I've done this a few times, so I'm already up to number 15. Don't just keep making camera views every time you want to see a perspective. Name. So I'll right click and rename, and I'll call this level 1 perspective. Okay, so then I can just open that up anytime I want to see. And I've seen people literally with hundreds of views because every time they want to see inside, they make a new camera. And then it becomes impossible to manage, and it will slow your file down in the end too. So just make it easy on yourself and give your cameras names. And then, if you want to see them in the plan view, you can simply right-click on that camera name and then go to Show Camera. And you can see it there, and that can be helpful to adjust the camera using the grips that you've got in plan. So, in the camera view? Oh yes, of course. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So if we go to the view, there's a great tool. I'm glad you reminded me about that, because you've got this tool over here, which is your navigation wheel, and it's got a lot of options for adjusting camera views that you don't get any other way. So if you like to do it in the view, that's really good. So you've got the look tool to rotate the direction of the view. We've got the orbit tool to rotate the camera around the target. We've got pan, which brings the camera and the target up and down, left and right together. And walk, if you want to go for a walk through your building. And then, what's the other good one? Oh, up, down, just to go straight up and down. So yeah, all those great tools for navigation. And yeah, so that's a really useful thing for cameras. So you don't forget that one, and if you don't get all those options, you've got to click on the little down arrow and just make sure you get the full navigation wheel. And Revit's getting better all the time with camera views. In the past, you couldn't edit everything all that easily in camera views, but these days you can do almost anything you like in a camera view. You can even place components fairly easily, like I'm doing there. You can see there, it's almost the same as working in a plan view or a section or anything like that. Okay, so that easy. Okay, so I've made my camera. I'll talk to you a lot more about cameras later. I can go forever about that. And it's, again, I think a really interesting thing. But just moving on, the rendering now is basically set up, but I'm going to check the sun direction by clicking on that little button at the bottom that turns the shadows on. And you can see already I've got sunlight coming through the windows. Now, I don't like that stair, so I'm going to delete that. It's in the way. And then we can see these other shadows. Now, you might think that that's set because of the sun direction. But it's actually not. You've got to click on that little sun button and go to sun settings and make sure it's not on lighting but on still. So on lighting, it uses the default direction, which is 45 degrees, roughly, so 35 and then 135, it's just an angle relative to the view, which often works. If you've got the windows on the right, it'll work, but it's not using the true north direction. So if you want that, you click on the still button, and it usually detects where you are. You can see there it's picked up Sydney. And then we've got the date and the time. And if you've ever wondered why you've got, in Windows especially, you've got OK and Apply. Do you know what the difference is? Why have you got those two buttons? And I'll give you a tip. They basically do the same thing. There's just one slight difference. Sometimes people think you've got to click Apply before you click OK. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so in Mac programs it's different, and you don't have the same option. The reason you've got them is because if you click Apply, it'll do what the settings you've changed without closing the dialog box. That's all. If you click OK, it'll apply those settings, but we lose that dialog box and we can't see tweaking anything. So that's all the apply button for. I'll turn off the ground plane. I just do that automatically. I don't ever use the ground plane, so I just recommend turning that off. And so if you notice that you get a big flat plane all the way from the horizon, it's because that's ticked, and you find this in your sun settings. And then this is even good on its own, just to go through and see how the angle of the sun changes throughout the year. So in the old days we had to look up the sun charts and see what all the different angles were in the different locations and learn it, manually by reading. But these days you can just go through and try out some different dates and times. So summer, January, and then 9 in the morning. Where do you think the sun's going to come from in relation to where we are? Yeah. Kind of behind, but then on the right. Yeah, so it's going to be the right hand side because it's rising in there. So if we click apply, we can see there, back into the right. So that's it. But then notice we don't get much sunlight, which is a bit counterintuitive. It's hotter in summer, but you generally get less light through the windows because it's steeper. So what time of the year is going to give us the most sunlight? Midwinter, exactly, which is a great thing for design. So this is the great thing about these programs. You can test out the real lighting conditions that you will have in your spaces. So there we are. We've got, in the middle of winter, first thing in the morning, we've got plenty of sunlight. So I'll get rid of these things coming through the floor as well. And I'm just going to click the teapot. You all know the teapot in Autodesk programs? Okay, so probably I'm just used to using these since the teapot came out, which was a long time ago. The teapot was an old thing in 3D Studio, and now every Autodesk program has it as the symbol for rendering. So whenever you see a teapot in an Autodesk program, it means render. So I've just clicked on that down the bottom, hit render. Give it a second. And we've got sunlight. Now it's a little bit dark. So if you've done photography, what do you do to make a dark photo lighter? Exposure. Exactly, yeah. Your levels is pretty much the same idea. So that's right. So here, if you click on adjust exposure, you get the option and very sensitive, just drag this slider a bit to the left. And again, I'll click apply, so I can test it out. That's better, but I want to make it a bit brighter. Again, apply, and we're getting a fairly bright scene now. So now that I've got some light, when I render, I can look at materials. I'll come back to this and show you some artificial lights afterwards, but I've got the floor there already set up. I'm just going to switch to the one that I had before. This one? Yeah. So there's my Twin Peaks floor. Which probably doesn't, everyone probably too young to remember. So, I'm probably showing my age. But there was a new one that came out. Did you see it? The new? I'm not going to recommend it. It's great. It's brilliant, but it's a bit mind-bending. So just be careful if you're going to watch that. I'm not joking. It's pretty full on. But they had some beautiful design, I think, in that show, and great cinematography. And they had this floor pattern was a big part of it. So I've set that material up using a texture. So that's what I wanted to finish with, and I'll show you that. So got my floor there. Edit type to change the floor. And I'll just test how you're going with this. If we want to make a new kind of floor, what's the next thing we do in Revit? Someone said it, did they? Duplicate, that's it. So that should be hopefully starting to be second nature. Duplicate and give it a new name. So let's call it Twin Peaks floor. The name's just for you, so you know what it is. When I click edit there for the structure and click on the slot there for the material, I can change that. And you might have the option there of adding in a new layer. Otherwise, we'll get this on the bottom of the floor as well. And you might think that's going to be a problem. It's not though, because I'm going to put a ceiling underneath this floor and we won't see the bottom. So I'm not going to add in a new layer. I'm just going to click there where it says by category. Any AutoCAD people here? I know a few of you have used AutoCAD. Do you know what the equivalent in AutoCAD is? In AutoCAD, there's an equivalent term to by category that you might have seen come up all the time. By layer, exactly. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, thinking that way, that's right. So you'll know what by category means. We'll go into AutoCAD later, but that's good if you're thinking about that. But when you see by category, it'll usually tell you that you can change the material by clicking there. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure you know by category is simply an option that you have for the material. Click Browse to change it. And this is where you get into the part that I was saying is a bit annoying with Revit because of the way you make your Revit materials, I'm going to call them. So, exactly, that's right. They're well, yeah, kind of default, they're stored in the template, but yeah, that's the right idea. So again, so I'm calling these the Revit materials, the ones on the left. So I call them Revit materials because essentially materials in Revit have different aspects. So I'm going to get on to what I call the render materials, which really is the appearance tab in a second. But make sure it's clear to you that you've got different tabs. You've got identity, graphics, appearance, and there are more. If you click on the plus there, you can add physical materials and thermal properties. If you're into environmental design, that's all built into Revit, and you can do those things with the thermal and the physical aspects. But you don't need to really do that so much. It's graphics and appearance that you should be focusing on. So what do you think the graphics tab might do if you've had a look at this, or even just looking at the settings? Maybe I'll just click on a pattern so you can see. Okay, so if you've been wondering where the hatch patterns are in Revit, that's where you've got the, in this case, the surface pattern. Right, now that's on drafting, which doesn't really make sense for surface patterns. You normally want model. Okay, so these are the simplified things that you see on the outside of your material, the outside of your objects. So herringbone for, you know, a brick pattern, parquet flooring, the brick soldier courses, not soldier courses, bond, stretcher bonds. Okay, so that's how things look on the outside. That's what model patterns generally are used for. And, well, let's put one in. Mine's pretty close to a herringbone pattern, even though it's timber. So I'll use that. And then you've got the cut pattern as well. And the cut patterns tend to be symbols. So they're not a drawing of the material, they're a symbol that represents the material. And this is really important for architectural graphics, which of course is what you have to use in interior design. Those symbols are really important as you go further into documentation. But you're not doing that for this project. So what are you going to be setting for your cut patterns? Solid, that's right, solid black. Or if you don't want it to look too heavy, solid grey can be okay. I don't even mind white, but yeah, some sort of solid pattern is good. So I'll set solid black for now. So that's the graphics tab. Now I've just started with this first material, which is called something stupid, AccuRender Plastics White Smooth. So I'll give it a better name just by right-clicking and I'll choose rename, and I'm going to call it again. Or let's call it tile herringbone. And I'll just do something very quickly, which is going to help you understand it. So all I did there was duplicate that material by right-clicking on it, just so I can show you the main thing that trips people up when they're working with the next tab here, the Appearance tab, is that often these things can be linked. And this is the main annoying thing you've got to get used to with materials in Revit. It's simple once you understand it, but it's the main reason you'll see people start to work with materials in Revit and then go, why, when I change the floor, do my walls change as well? And everyone has this problem. When you first start using Revit, it happens to everyone. And it's because when you duplicate the material over here, it's still linked to the original one in the Appearance tab. So it's shared, in other words. And you can tell because it's got the number here. So see how with that hand it's got the number 1? And that tells me that it's still shared with this original material that I copied. It's weird because the Graphics tab isn't shared, but the Appearance tab is. That's right, you just duplicate again. It's a simple thing. Once you know, it's really easy to get around. You just right-click there and choose Duplicate again. Or you've got the button over here that does the same thing. Oh, yeah, just one. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So now this one. So when we go back here, it's no, that's right. It doesn't duplicate here. It just duplicates the appearance. Yeah, it's confusing when you explain it, but when you're doing it, it's not too bad. And as long as you remember that, keep an eye out for the hand. And when you see a number there, if it's not 0, I recommend just duplicate. And it doesn't matter if you do it again. It doesn't break it or even make extra things that you need to think about. And it avoids that linking problem that can get in the way. So, again, it's just that one annoying thing with materials in Revit that causes a lot of problems. And once you can get past that, it's got all the options you want for rendering. So this is a plastic material. And if I wanted plastic, that's all I'd need to do. Leave it and change the colour. So there you can see it's changing. Let's just make it a bit darker so you can see the change. Easy. But I want to put an image on. Clicking on that colour there, I can choose image. I just want to show you one other option. When you right click on that tab, you can also choose replace. And that takes you to the appearance library, which is this folder here. And like most things in Revit, you get a pretty good library when you install the program. And these are all the render materials set up. And you just need to go through, and in this case, I want tiles. So I'm going to go to ceramic, tile, double click. And then after I close that, you can see there's the tile material. If I don't like that, no problem. Right click, replace, and then go through that appearance library and find something that's closer to what I want. So notice I'm just double clicking, and then it goes in behind there onto that appearance tab. I'm going to go back to the one that I started with, that mosaic blue, not because I want that particular sort of tile, but because it's got the basic setup that I want. So when you start working with rendering, you're really more after the options that you're looking for rather than the particular look, because maybe you can always change that to a different image. So I just want a tile set up that's using an image, and now, if you remember the different formats we looked at, if I click on that file name there, and then I'm going to browse and show you one last little library resource that we've got on the P drive in interior design, material images, and I've put literally thousands of different files there that you can use to make your materials. It's just taking a second to show up. So let's have a look in the tiles folder. There's the one that I used before. Now notice, if you look closely, it's got that mosaic pattern still there in the background, which actually kind of looks alright, but I'm going to turn it off. So, anyone want to have a guess why it's still got that bump pattern there? Spot on, exactly, yeah, the relief pattern. So you've got these two things, bumps and relief are very similar. And yeah, so when you see something unexpected, just have a look and see what options you've got turned on, and normally you can just turn off the one that you think is causing a problem, and now we just see the image without that relief getting in the way. So apart from that file, that folder I just showed you, I'll just show you how to get to it manually. So again, P drive, new design, material images, the tiles, okay, all sorts of tile patterns there. So what's going to be another great source of images for your materials? Exactly. These days, I used to pay a fortune. I've paid thousands for collections for texture packs, and I regret it because I find much better things now just by searching in Google and typing in whatever I want, texture, and or seamless texture. Yeah, and you'll find almost anything. And so then what do you use to work on them? If you want to manipulate those images? Photoshop, exactly. So that's where Photoshop ties into Revit. Before you export your renders, you're going to use Photoshop as well to work on your texture files. So it's going to work. But as well as choosing that image, what else do we need to tell Revit to get a bit of control over how it looks? Exactly, the size. So we click on this image swatch here to get the size, which you can see is, it's not that small, it's pretty good size, 700 mil. But I'm going to make it a bit bigger, so I'll make that 1,000 for the width and the height. So that means this image is going to be exactly a metre in real life in our space. So that's it. Okay, okay, okay. And there we go, we can see it, so that will render just like I can see it there. I've got it coming up, by the way, in this viewport because it's on realistic. So again, hitting render. Oh yeah, yeah, of course, absolutely, yeah, I'll show you that. Yeah, sure, go for it, yeah, sure. Of course, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay, so I'll show you both those things. Okay, so quick way of getting to the material is to go to Manage and then Materials. So I don't have to go through the floor. So there's my material. And then if you want to change the appearance, again on the Appearance tab, click on that swatch. And you've got the angle here. So I'll make it, say, 90 to rotate it 90 degrees. You can put any angle. Let's try 45. That might work. And then there next to that, that's where you've got the origin. So you can set the starting point just using that option. There's another control for it as well, but that's probably the easiest one. And that's it. So yeah, you've got total control over the placement of the texture. Yep. But it's good to think about that. There we are. And for interior design, I mean, it's a really offensive thing actually when people say you're, what is it, cushion pickers or something like that. You'll hear some, you know, idiotic people call interior designers and decorators that, and it really annoys me when they say that because it's offensive, I think. But it does give you an idea about a big part of the work that you do, which is choosing the materials. And it's really important for a space, I think, to be able to have great material design. So it's just important for your rendering to you know, think about the way you are going to get the materials to show in your presentations, and using these 3D techniques you can do some great things. And of course, try and apply the things that you're doing there with Photoshop as well. And yeah, so hopefully that will get you started with rendering. Sorry? Yeah, it's a dryer. Yeah, I know. So I'd definitely enclose that and get out of there. I do want to go through some quick ways of doing a layout. Well, I mean, is that all something you mostly feel pretty comfortable with so far? Oh, yes, that's a good point. Yes. Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely. So make sure you keep the texture files. That's a really good point. So this image file here that I've used to make the tiles, when I go to another computer, it won't be there. Yeah, I'll show you again. Okay, so it's the P drive, so student resources, and then you've got EDU, DC, interior design, and then there's a folder called material images. So material images. So you could just copy that whole folder, but it's 2 gig. But if you want to copy it, you're welcome to. Otherwise, just take the files that you've used. And yeah, it is really important. I'm glad I mentioned that. Again, when you go to a different computer, Revit doesn't take the files with you. So you need to manually copy all of the texture files that you're using, and a bit like InDesign, and take them to the place that you're going to be working to do your renderings. And that's a really important thing to think about with your file management. Yeah. So maybe, I'll take a break and then we can come back and do some other things.
Okay, so